Adnan Menderes was born in 1899 in Aydin, a part of western Turkey. His family owned a lot of land and was well off. This meant he had a comfortable childhood and could go to good schools. He studied law at Ankara University. What he learned there helped him later in his political life. Menderes showed his love for his country early on by fighting in Turkey's War of Independence. Because he helped during this very important war, he received the Medal of Independence. This early service for his country showed that he would later work hard for the people and wanted to help shape the future of the Turkish Republic. This gave him a good start for his future in the sometimes difficult world of politics. After World War II, politics in Turkey was a time of big changes, and people were hopeful but also careful. For a long time, only one party, the Republican People's Party, or CHP, founded by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, had been in charge. Now more and more people wanted more freedom and more say in the government. The war was over, and a new world situation was starting, where many countries had several political parties. Inside Turkey, problems with money and society also made people want changes in politics. This was a key turning point as Turkey started to carefully move towards a system where many different political groups could exist. It was a good time for new political leaders and ideas to come out, to challenge the old ways and offer different futures for the nation. It was during this time of big change that Adnan Menderes, along with other important people, started the Democrat Party, DP, in 1946. His main partners in this were Celalbaya Fuat Koprulu and Refik Koraltan. All of them used to be in the CHP. The Democrat Party offered a different choice. They wanted businesses to have more freedom, for the government to control less of the economy, and a way that allowed people more freedom to practice their religion. Menderes, with his way of speaking that many people liked and his background as a landowner, quickly became a main leader in the new party. Many voters listened to him and agreed with him, especially people in the countryside and business owners who wanted a change from many years of government-controlled policies. The Democrat Party's rise led to the big elections on May 14, 1950. These elections were a very important turning point for democracy in Turkey. The Democrat Party won by a very large amount, getting most of the seats in the Grand National Assembly. So Adnan Menderes became Turkey's first prime minister, chosen in an election where different parties truly competed. This started a new time for the country. This win wasn't just a change of government, it showed a really big change in how Turkish people thought about politics. It showed that voters were ready for change and started 10 years of DP rule with Menderes as leader. This time would bring big changes to Turkey. Some were good and some caused a lot of disagreement, deeply shaping its modern history. Adnan Menderes' time as Prime Minister from 1950 to 1960 is often called the Menderes Decade. During this time, he really focused on growing the economy and moving away from the old government-controlled ways of doing things. His government worked very hard to make farming more modern. A lot of money was spent on using more machines in farming, like bringing in many tractors and combine harvesters. This was often helped by money from America through the Marshall Plan. There were also new rules about land, trying to give more power and help to small farmers. These actions led to a big increase in how much food was grown, especially in the first few years he was in charge, and it changed life in rural Turkey a lot. Besides changes in farming, Menderes' government started big projects to build things the country needed, like roads and dams. There was a big plan to build many new roads, connecting villages and towns that were hard to get to with bigger cities and markets. These better roads made it easier for people to trade goods and move around inside the country. Many dams were built to provide water for farms and to make electricity. Ports were made bigger to help trade with other countries. New businesses were also encouraged, with rules that gave them more freedom, which brought in money from other countries and helped private companies grow. These developments helped make life clearly better for many people, especially in the countryside, and made many people feel that things were getting better and gave them hope. In social and religious life, Menderes' policies brought changes to the strict rules that kept religion and government very separate. While the government itself stayed officially separate from religion, his government allowed the call to prayer, ezan, to be said in Arabic again. Before this, There was a rule that it had to be in Turkish. More religious education was offered, and more money was given to build and take care of mosques. These changes were very popular with people in Turkish society who followed religion closely and felt their beliefs had been pushed aside. However, these same policies also got criticism from people who strongly believed religion and government should be separate. They feared a weakening of the changes Ataturk had made and worried that religion might start to have too much power in how the country was run. On the world stage, Menderes strongly sided Turkey with Western countries like the USA and those in Western Europe during the Cold War. A very important moment in this was when Turkey joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1952. Joining NATO made Turkey's important position very clear to the West as an important defense against the Soviet Union trying to spread its power. Menderes's government actively took part in groups led by Western countries like the Baghdad Pact, which later became CENTO, that aimed to stop communism from spreading in the Middle East. His foreign policy showed strong support for America and Western countries. While this made sure Turkey had a place with its Western friends, these policies also sometimes led to difficult relationships with some nearby countries in the Middle East, which had many political problems and changes in the 1950s. Even though many people liked him at first and he won elections by a lot, Adnan Menderes's government saw growing political divisions as the 1950s went on. The Republican People's Party, CHP, led by the former president Ismet Inonu, was the main group against him. The CHP, along with some educated people in the cities and the army, became more and more critical of Menderes. They accused his Democrat Party government of acting too much like a ruler who didn't listen to others. This included not allowing people to disagree and using government power to silence those who opposed him. The freedom of newspapers and media was limited, and laws were passed that critics said were made to stop political opponents. This led to a very angry and bitter feeling in politics. By the second half of the 1950s, Turkey started to have serious money problems. The fast growth and farming expansion in the early Menderes years had been partly paid for by money from other countries and because the government was spending a lot. This led to prices going up quickly, more debt to other countries, and not enough of important things people needed. These money troubles caused some people to stop supporting Menderes and gave groups against him more reasons to criticize. The government's efforts to control the economy with different rules often didn't work well or were not popular, making the political problems even worse and creating a sense of worry among people about the country's economic stability and future. These growing problems finally led to a breaking point on May 27, 1960. A group of army leaders who called themselves the National Unity Committee and were led by General Cemal Gürsel took over the government using the army. The takeover was quick and mostly happened without anyone getting killed at first. Prime Minister Adnan Menderes, President Celal Bayar and many other Democrat Party ministers and officials were arrested. The army leaders closed down the parliament and stopped using the country's main laws. They gave reasons for why they took over, saying the government had moved away from Ataturk's ideas, was too controlling, handled the economy badly, and that the growing political fighting was, in their view, dangerous for the country. The coup was a dark day for Turkish democracy. After the coup, Menderes and other main leaders of the Democrat Party were put on trial on the island of Yassıada. The trials were held by a special court set up just for this. Many people, both then and later historians, doubted if the trials were fair or if the court had the right to judge them. The accused faced many different charges, from taking money illegally and misusing power to breaking the country's main laws. After months of trials, which everyone knew about and were full of political feelings, very harsh decisions were made. Adnan Menderes, Foreign Minister Fatih Rustuzorlu, and Finance Minister Hasan Polatkan were sentenced to death. Zorlu and Polatkan were executed on September 16, 1961. Menderes was executed the next day, on September 17, 1961. This shocked the whole country very deeply. Adnan Menderes' story in Turkey is complicated, has many sides, and still makes people feel very strong emotions today. For many Turkish people, especially those who have conservative and right-leaning political views, he is remembered as a hero who died for democracy. They see him as a leader who truly did what the people wanted. brought new kinds of progress that the country had not seen before and helped religious people feel that their voices were heard. His execution is seen as a terrible injustice, a cruel stopping of democracy by army leaders who were not chosen by the people. On the other hand, some critics, especially strong supporters of a secular state, and those who follow the CHP tradition, see him as a leader who was popular with ordinary people, but some say his actions ended up weakening the country's democracy, and that he started to act too much like a strong ruler who didn't share power in his later years. In modern Turkey, Adnan Menderes is still a very powerful symbol in politics. Current political leaders, especially President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Justice and Development Party, AK Party, often talk about Menderes and his story. He is often shown as a hero of democracy who suffered for working for the nation and like someone who went through similar fights before them, against powerful groups and those who were against democracy. This way of telling his story presents Menderes as an inspiration for Turkey's leaders today, pointing out how many people supported him and his efforts to change the country. Airports, universities and big streets across Turkey are named after him, making sure he is remembered by the country as a very important person in history, even though people have different opinions about him. Gatherings to remember Adnan Menderes and his executed ministers are held regularly, especially on the date they died. For example, in September 2024, Turkey remembered the 63rd anniversary of their executions with ceremonies in Istanbul. Government officials like Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya and family members of the victims attended. At these events, speakers often say that army takeovers are like acts of betrayal against what the people of the nation wanted and against the country's future. Ömer İleri, a leader in the AK party, said at one such event that even though the 1960 coup was once celebrated, people believe that the time of army takeovers in Turkey is over. This became especially clear after the failed 2016 coup attempt was stopped because so many people in the country stood up against it. This makes the story stronger that democracy in Turkey can survive and bounce back from challenges. Gap 2S. In a completely unrelated and recent event, the name Adnan Menderes showed up in news headlines far from Turkey in Toronto, Canada. In May 2025, Toronto police announced they had arrested a 61-year-old man named Adnan Menderes Obuz. He was charged with sexual assault. Police say he was accused of lying about who he was on dating apps. This sad news is a clear reminder that a name, even one that means a lot in history and is linked to a nation's big political story, can show up in completely different and upsetting situations. The shared name is a strange thing to happen by chance. It's like a small, unconnected reminder from far away and long ago, a small modern note added to a big story from history, totally separate from the life and story of Turkey's former Prime Minister.